Well, just in terms of a quick welcome, we're super excited to have this interest webinar for the TPM Academy of LA, and my colleague Nikki De Silva, who's joining me here today. We're both really excited to work with this cohort to make sure that we are setting you up for success in thinking about how the LA region can make use of the TPM framework. So we are recording today's session. We have quite a few colleagues who registered and aren't able to attend in live. So we'll be sending out the recording for folks along with the application materials. So please feel free to share that information with your colleagues if they weren't able to join for today's interest webinar. We do have a facilitation deck that we'll use. We can send that out to folks as well. So I will go ahead and get that up and running. But by all means, throughout the presentation, please feel free to stop me at any point in time in the case that you have any questions, and we'll go through them together. We do have a decent amount of time set aside for question and answer, but I never mind being interrupted. And then, as I said, my colleague Nikki is on the call as well. And so she'll be able to address questions as they come up in the chat too. So just a quick overview of what we're going to cover. We spent most of the time on the Champions Workshop talking about the TPM framework itself. We're actually going to spend the majority of the time today talking about the TPM Academy, what that experience is like, as well as what is the application process to participate in the TPM Academy. As I mentioned, certainly opportunity to ask questions. So please feel free to be loud and be proud when you've got something that you're thinking about. But just as a starting place, my name is Jamie Francis. I serve as Vice President at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation. I've been with the organization for about 13 years, I think going on 14 years this year. And I've had the privilege of overseeing the Talent Pipeline Management National Learning Network for now the past 9 years. I'm joined by my colleague Nikki, so I'll have her introduce herself, but just so you know, it's not just the two of us. We have a fantastic team of colleagues that are really eager to get to know you guys, not only over the application process, but certainly the Academy and beyond. Our colleague Jason Tishko, who is the Senior Vice President at the U.S. Chamber Foundation, is the co-creator of the TPM framework, along with our other programs that fall under our workforce portfolio. And so we're excited for you guys to not only become a part of the TPM family, but to learn how that connects to other workforce programming that we have that's supporting partners all over the country and increasingly abroad. Nikki, do you want to come off mute and introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Nikki De Silva, also with the Chamber Foundation. Excited to be working with you all over the next few months.
And a huge thank you to our co-hosts at the Los Angeles Regional Consortium. We've had the privilege of getting to know Narne over the past several months, and we're super excited the fact that the community seems really interested and motivated to solve for some of the big talent challenges that the region is facing. And so just a huge thank you, because there is a decent amount of work that goes into being a co-host. So the fact that they have volunteered so readily and have really come at this with the best interest of the community is something that we think speaks really highly. So we're very grateful. So a huge thank you to the LARC team. We're certainly appreciative. So at the top, just want to revisit what talent pipeline management is as a starting point. As I said, we're not going to spend a ton of time here, but what we really want to make sure we're emphasizing is the fact that TPM is an employer-led, demand-driven approach, to try to overcome some of the most pressing and most common talent challenges that communities across the country are facing. And where we find our kind of true north, our foundation, is in supply chain management principles. And the reason for supply chain, if you think about the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation's correlation and relationship with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce as the country's largest business organization, is we really think about, what speaks to the employer community. And so supply chain management is a language that many employers are familiar with. It's how many of them run to their day-to-day business. And it puts them in the mindset of how critically important it is for them to communicate very clearly with their network of partners and suppliers in many cases to get what they need, when they need it, where they need it. So that first image that you see on this screen defines that relationship, right, of a traditional supply chain. So, how do you start with a raw good and over time add value so that as it gets to that end customer, that last step in the process, it's meeting all of the expectations and requirements that that end customer would have? We take that same approach and say, well, what if you were to take those same concepts and apply them to talent? And it's not to say that students are widgets or institutions of higher learning are manufacturers and distributors, but that key concept, at least for the part of the employer, is for them to be able to recognize, oh, this is actually a huge responsibility of mine to be crystal clear about what I need, when I need it, and where I need it. And what are the quality standards that I would expect for that student to know so that they can seamlessly transition into the workforce? Now, this can also be applied if you're thinking about an existing worker and ensuring that as they prepare for a new role, an emerging role, or they're trying to advance in their career, then again, the employer is being crystal clear as to how can they advance in their careers. What are those experiences, those trainings that will help that person be successful? The third image is really just meant to represent the fact that we know employers have not always been crystal clear and effective in communicating what their needs are. We send a lot of missed signals out into the talent ecosystem. So I'm sure you all can think of some examples, but one that increasingly, comes up is this question of, is a 4-year degree really required to be successful in all roles? Or has it become a proxy that the employer community is sending out to say, this is what's really important to me? Whereas it might more so be some skills that a person could attain in a 4-year degree experience, or one that could possibly be acquired in a 2-year experience, or some additional learning or work experience that's not necessarily tied to the more traditional ways that employers have evaluated what a person knows or is capable of doing. And so we want to acknowledge that, the employer community has room for improvement in terms of sending clearer signals of what they really need in the workforce. And that's what these images are meant to help demonstrate. One of the common questions that Nikki and I get is, there's a lot of workforce development approaches out there. How is TPM any different from others? And we talked about this a little bit on the Champions workshop. And as I said there, it's really not just one thing that makes TPM distinctive from other workforce approaches. We also will never say that TPM is the silver bullet that is going to solve for every community challenge out there, and not even every talent challenge that's out there. But the fact that it is based on industry best practices and that we are very much focusing on delivering an employer return on investment is what is tied to this challenge that so many education and training provider partners have communicated, which is how do you sustain employer engagement in partnering with education and training providers in the long term? Because what we tend to see is that engagement over time wanes. Perhaps they're not getting a bang for their buck, or maybe even they are, but that value proposition has not been stated in a way that resonates with them. And so that is the reason that TPM is very, very focused on how can we ensure that we are delivering a positive return on investment for employers so that we can unlock that longer term employer engagement that we're demonstrating to them by partnering with us. You are going to see wins. Now, these are wins that are not just for the benefit of the employer, they are also for the benefit of the student and the worker, as well as the education and training provider. So employers getting the talent that they need, but also students and workers having a better understanding of what does it take to be successful in this particular role and securing that employment or those career advancement opportunities. For the education and training provider, the shared value for them is ensuring that their programs of study, that the experiences they're offering their students are ultimately going to help that student succeed once they have left their institution or that training provider. So it's really important that while we do lead with this concept of employer leadership and delivering a positive return on investment for employers, there is shared value that goes along with that, just as in supply chain management. And one of the distinguishing factors that a lot of our partners who have been through the TPM Academy have implemented talent pipeline management in their communities. What I hear a lot of them talk about when they're trying to help familiarize people with the benefit and the use of the TPM framework is this concept of data, the role that data plays in the TPM process, and the fact that by getting primary labor market information from the employers that have come around the table to go through this TPM process, we are better equipped with the information that we need in order to co-develop those talent supply chain solutions with our education and training partners. So it's really important to provide that safe space for employers to come together to get that actionable and granular data that's going to help identify those important training solutions. Nikki, anything that you would like to add here before I move on? So these are the 6 TPM strategies. The one that's not on here is our TPM orientation, in which we really just try to start to familiarize people with what is the TPM framework. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on the strategies because I want to make sure that we leave plenty of time to talk about the application process, but just at a very high level, you can think about these as a simple set of questions that we're trying to answer. So Nikki, I always love the way that you present this slide because we really try to just simplify and make this an approachable process for employers of all shapes and sizes and industries. So in the first strategy of organizing for employer leadership and collaboration, we're trying to ask, what's your pain point? What's keeping you up at night? Is it that you have unfilled job opening roles for customer service positions? Are you having difficulty retaining your registered nurses? In strategy 2, once we've identified that focus area, the next question is simple supply chain management information. How many do I need? When do I need them? And where do I need them? In strategy 3, we're layering in quality. So we now need to better understand what are the essential skills that people need to know and be able to do to succeed in these roles. And what is the opportunity for employers to adopt shared language to communicate roles that they have across their companies? And I always like to add in here that we are not trying to get employers to agree on one single job description for job roles across a bunch of different companies. They do not have to be carbon copies of one another. However, it can be very helpful for education and training providers, as well as for workers, potential workers, and students who are participating in training programs to see if there is some commonality from one company to another. So sometimes it's just as important for us to be able to know the differences from company to company, but where can there be some consensus from employers on what those important skills are? In strategy 4, we start to bring supply into the equation. So thus far, it's been predominantly demand focused, but now we're going to start to ask the question, where does our talent currently come from? Where are there opportunities for us to expand our talent pipeline and potentially bring some new providers to the table? Because almost always, not every time, but almost always, the demand we've discovered in the second strategy is going to be higher than the supply that we have been able to identify in strategy 4. So in strategy 5, we're taking all of this critical information and we're saying, okay, education training partners, come to the table with employers. What are the solutions going to be that we can co-develop? What does success look like? How are we measuring that success? And what are incentives that we can all put on the table to ensure that our efforts are aligning towards that same end goal? In strategy 6, we then ask, okay, where do we need improvement? What did not go the way we expected? Where are those intervention opportunities? And how can we ensure that we build resilient pipelines that should a disruption occur, like what you all have been devastatingly experienced, how can we make sure that we can be agile and responsive, whether that disruption is impacting the demand side, the supply side, or both? And so that very simply are the strategies that make up the TPM framework, and that is what would ultimately make up the TPM Academy experience. So I'm curious to see, I see some great comments that Nikki has added in the chat, so thank you for that. But are there any questions from folks thus far? Or Nikki, anything that you would want to add in terms of context to the comments that you were making in the chat?
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the big things too, and I know that there's quite a few kind of educators or community partners on the call and who would be a part of this academy process is a lot of, particularly, strategies 1 through 4 are very focused on the employer and the work that the employer needs to do. But if you really think about it, what it is preparing the employer to be a better partner to you, right? How do we help employers better understand what their biggest needs are? How to articulate that in a way that you can be responsive to it versus having to almost pull it out of them in an advisory board meeting. And that's one employer, right? Now you have an aggregate of employers who have a better understanding of how to communicate with you effectively to be those partners when you're starting to think about curriculum redesign or additional supports that might be needed for people to enter the workforce, to stay connected to the workforce, to be able to advance and have economic mobility. So we're really thinking about all of those pieces and what does that mean for you too, to be supporting partners to employers as they're starting to do that work, right? Because this is not a space that many employers have had to play in before, unless you're thinking about the really large enterprises that have the capacity to do this internally already.
I think that's such a great point, and I love, that you bring up the fact that we do have a number of providers on the call. And though I didn't touch on that particular point in terms of what makes TPM different, one of the bullets that you likely saw was that, the TPM approach is agnostic in terms of what defines a provider. So for those of you on the call who are representing Goodwill, for instance, like we would consider you to be a part of that provider community. And so when we talk about bringing education training providers to the table, it's not only the more traditional definition that we might have for what training encompasses, but that also might be support services that are offered by community-based organizations. And how does that fit into the equation in terms of the solutions that will be developed with this community? So we're excited in terms of just kind of the breadth of representation to participate in this community, because it will make those discussions when we have those in-person trainings that much more valuable, just to have different perspectives and different roles that are played. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this slide, just in the sense of, letting you know that this is, a proven methodology that has been applied across many different types of industries with many employers all across the country. And we're really excited because as we continue to grow in number, we also continue to grow in terms of learning lessons and best practices, and where there are opportunities to support our partners in some specialty areas. So for example, we've been developing new courses around how you can use talent pipeline management to inform and to leverage public policy at the state level, local level, potentially also federal level. But we're also currently working on developing information and learning resources around apprenticeships and how the TPM framework can be used to enhance either existing apprenticeship programs or to help inform the development of apprenticeship programs and finding where there are potential on-ramps into apprenticeship experiences for folks. And so I know that there's some interest for the LA region, and so we'll be excited to bring you guys into the fold as those resources continue to be developed and then are eventually released as well. So let me stop there again, just to see, are there any questions from folks before we start talking about the TPM Academy experience? And please feel free to just come off mute or pop it in the chat.
I'm here as a fly on the wall. This is Diana Diassi. I'm here as a fly on the wall to support the Goodwill team. And I've looked over the information, the parts of the curriculum for the academy. And so we're so multifaceted in the way that we serve the community, because we serve businesses, of course, yep, because we take in participants. And so we've got to work together with the businesses to place the participants. We're also an employer yep, who takes on individuals in what we call our work experience trainee program and place them in various industries and train them. So I'm kind of really interested in seeing how this applies on all the different levels. This is my second time attending this meeting. And so now there are friends with me. So, and I'm just trying to kind of wrap my head around how how many ways we're able to apply this and how this works for us.
I love that. And we have members of the TPM community that work with Goodwill, like work for Goodwill, as well as folks who work with like the United Ways. And so if it would be helpful to connect with them to see how they kind of approach their training experience as well as their implementation experience, thinking about your multifaceted roles, we would be more than happy to make those introductions. They might be able to offer some advice as to how not to be completely like overwhelmed with trying to figure out, well, how should I come at it from this way and this way? So just know that that's kind of part of being a member of the TPM National Learning Network, is that we're always excited for those valuable perspectives that you guys are bringing, especially as you are wearing multiple hats, and can maybe make use of the framework in different ways, as you said. Nikki, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I was gonna say, and maybe it's better, we can dive deeper into this as we go through the actual TPM Academy training. But Diana, I popped in the chat right before your comment. Goodwill Ads is the example of kind of being this broader ecosystem between the Excel centers, the wraparound supports you provide to the community, and then obviously from the employer perspective, that you're an organization that will have to think. We have this visual called the value stream map, where it's really identifying, okay, you might have multiple teams within your organization that are going to be playing different roles at different points in this process based on their responsibilities, right? Like those that are providing the education services versus those that are providing the employment services might do two different things in the TPM process. So as you're thinking about this and even thinking about who from your organization might benefit from going through the academy at the start, is let's think about the different activities that Goodwill does and what teams that you'll need to be able to deploy internally to do this work, and who is the best person to lead that as maybe the right fit for the TPM Academy.
Okay, thank you.
And Nikki, I realize I just, oh, please go ahead.
Say I apologize. I thought when I began speaking that I put my camera back on, so I apologize for that.
Not at all. It's no problem. And Nikki, I just realized that the question that you asked about the value stream map, I only just sent it to you. So if you want to send it to the whole group in the group chat, just I don't have the value stream map as part of visual in this presentation. But if not, Nikki, I can pop it to the whole folks at the next kind of stopping point. But it provides the value stream map that Nikki references, just provides a really nice visualization of better at identifying like what are the various kind of touch points that employers need to have at what stage, and same with supplier. And the nice thing that it demonstrates is like there's an overlap, right? Employers are going to need to touch early parts of the pipeline, just like providers are eventually going to touch latter parts of the pipeline once a person has been employed for some time and might need to think about upskilling or reskilling or career coaching. So there's lots of opportunity for us to get more clear about who's doing what at what point, and how do those activities connect in a way that means to more meaningful, effective engagement. Again, how can we all be better partners to one another? But very importantly, how does that lead to greater success for the students and workers? But thank you, Diana, for your willingness to kind of chat about those different roles that you guys are playing. And we would definitely love Goodwill's perspective as part of this cohort.
Well, thank you so much. And that partner introduction, that would be helpful as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to do it. Very good. Well, just to start talking about the TPM Academy experience itself, why we're trying to connect with you all today is to just educate you on what this learning experience looks like. And I think one of the things that we really like to emphasize speaks so nicely to, you teed us up really beautifully, Diana, so thank you. But just this concept of networking with your peers and the just honestly the amazing network of partners that we've now built out, of people who have participated in TPM academies and are just so generous with their learnings and their experiences, and that continues to make the resources that we develop better. But I think it also really helps with the effectiveness of implementation after people have gone through a TPM academy, because we do have so many learning lessons and best practices that we can speak to, and just the continued engagement amongst the network, I think makes a big difference. But also, thinking about the peers that you're going to go through this learning experience with. Many of you, I'm sure, have relationships with one another. Maybe you've seen each other at this event or that event, but to strategize with one another how you're going to make use of this framework for your region, that peer-to-peer networking is also just so critically important. So it's building up your, your army for the LA region, but also knowing that you have this national group to go to and to turn to as you, undoubtedly experience challenges in implementation or even in trying to understand the framework. You've got a lot of folks who are rooting for you and championing your efforts. The facilitation that we run is based off of a signature TPM Academy curriculum that was developed by our team and has been updated many a time over the past 9 years. Again, because of those firsthand implementation experiences and feedback from our partners, we will give you guys access to the hard copy of the TPM Academy curriculum. It's available on our website, but you all will also have access to the e-learning modules, which is the TPM Academy curriculum transformed into an interactive learning experience. So excited to get you guys set up in our TPM CoLab platform so that you can make use of the e-learning, which will set you up really nicely for the instruction that we will do for those 3 in-person trainings that make up this academy. And so we will encourage you all to do the e-learning modules. And then as you come to the in-person trainings, those will be facilitated by our team, as well as members of the TPM National Learning Network, who we have deemed as TPM Academy faculty, but a lot of great insight and perspective based on that firsthand experience that they have been engaging in their communities. And part of this learning experience is what we call the Employer Collaborative Project. And essentially, as you're learning the TPM framework, you're going to be participating as a group in teams in which you are essentially setting up a hypothetical employer collaborative using the TPM framework. And this is a fantastic component of the TPM Academy experience that Nikki thought of during the pandemic, as we were, just trying to ensure that people were really able to apply what they were learning as part of the TPM Academy experience. We really want to make sure we're equipping you all with the tools to be able to make use of the framework, no matter which role you're coming at the table with, but make sure that you're going to be able to use the framework in a way that's really going to deliver a return on investment for you, for your organization, and for your community. So this capstone project is a really neat component of your TPM Academy experience. And we'll talk a little bit more about the continued learning and the implementation supports that's offered, because while you participate in the TPM Academy as a one-time thing, you continue to be a member of the family and open to participating in other events that we'll get a chance to talk about. I'm not going to necessarily rattle off all of these dates. You've got them here on the screen. They're also on the TPM Academy of LA website. But just so you know, applications are available as of now. The application does not take very long. So we get a lot of folks, who wait until the last minute. I would highly encourage you, if you're able to submit your application in advance of February 25th, I'm sure the LARC team would appreciate it. But it's a pretty short application, just a couple of short answer questions that we would love to hear from you. But after today's webinar, you still have about a little less than 3 weeks to submit that application, but would suggest that you do it when you can, and then we'll do a virtual kickoff and then 3 in-person trainings. And so the only in-person location that we're still determining is that last one in June. We have the campuses in which the first 2 trainings will be on. So any questions about that? Awesome. Okay, just in terms of what comes after the academy, one of the things that we pride ourselves on is we continue to have a very active network of TPM partners and practitioners who are, likely to participate in our continued learning experiences, whether that's the specialty courses that I referenced on apprenticeship or public policy. We also have one for job quality and for opportunity populations. We host an annual in-person summit. If you want to go ahead and mark the dates on your calendar, this year it's September 30th and October 1st, and that is at our office in Washington, D.C. But there's no better kind of exposure to the TPM National Learning Network, because this entire conference really targets those who are implementing TPM or interested in implementing TPM. So highly encourage you to participate in that. We'd love to have a big California contingent because our California network is certainly growing. We do have interactive quarterly webinars webinars in which we bring together the network to talk about topics that are of interest to them. So for example, the one that we're going to do next week is how can you effectively collaborate with workforce boards to implement TPM strategies. And so we'll be hearing from a national representative as well as some local representatives that have effectively used the TPM framework, either led by their workforce board or in collaboration with their workforce board. But those are hosted quarterly. We also do specialty topic webinars. Our colleagues at the Kentucky Chamber host a monthly therapy call, as we like to call it. Group therapy can be very helpful in terms of just trying to work together to identify what are solutions to common implementation challenges that folks experience, or where can we leverage one another's subject matter expertise on particular industries. So always happy to see that network of folks grow. And then about 2 years ago, we started to do what are called implementation workshops, in which we're really trying to help people make that jump from having understood the theory behind TPM to applying the framework. And so to equip folks with implementation tools that we don't have quite as much time to talk about during the academy trainings, but it's almost like the 201 version of the TPM Academy is how do I go deeper? How do I better understand what this is going to look like in my community? And we host those sometimes on a more general basis, but a lot of times on specialty topic areas. For the specialty courses that I referenced, we're often putting together review committees that are made up of members of our network. So just for an example, the apprenticeship work that Nikki is overseeing right now has about a half a dozen TPM partners from all across the country who have experience in working in apprenticeships, and quite a few of them in connecting that TPM framework to their apprenticeship strategy. We have an incredible network base of leaders now that has just grown and grown. So not only our TPM Academy faculty who help facilitate the training, but our TPM fellows who serve as spokespeople. We also have mentors that you all will get to meet as part of your employer collaborative project. So lots of engagement opportunities for you all to just kind of continue your learning and your experience with talent pipeline management and broader workforce challenges. So I'm now just going to take a moment to talk a little bit about TPM CoLab, which is our online learning platform. This, as I said, is where the e-learning modules exist. And so we'll encourage you all to go through the e-learning module for the strategy tied to the in-person training that you'll come to. And so as part of your orientation, we'll familiarize you all with the TPM CoLab platform. But by going through those e-learning modules, that will equip you to have really effective engagement and participation for the in-person trainings. And so we're really excited to have you all get your hands dirty and go through that self-paced component of the TPM Academy so that we can make that in-person time just really, really effective for your purposes. And you will have an opportunity to receive a digital badge so that you can become a TPM talent supply chain manager. So at the end of you going through the training experience, you will have access to a summative assessment that's made up of 28 questions. If you get 80% or more, then you receive your digital badge. You can take the assessment another time if you don't get it the first time around, but there are continued learning opportunities, as we said, and so you can continue to kind of build on your public demonstration of TPM knowledge by earning a specialty badge, or also eventually, once you have implementation experience under your belt, to become a TPM, a verified TPM talent supply chain manager by submitting a portfolio of work, having that assessed by peers, and then earning that advanced credential. Any questions there before we talk about eligibility, or should I proceed? All right, I waited the customary 8 seconds, so I will move on. But up on the screen, it just shares who is our kind of targeted audience for the TPM Academy experience. As I said, if you represent an organization and you have other folks on your team who were not able to join, or even outside of your organization that you think would benefit from knowing the TPM framework and be able to contribute to talent supply chain solutions in the LA region, looking for a good kind of cross-section of employers and workforce education professionals and community partners, and eager to allow for a lot of this valuable perspective, that Diana talked about, wearing multiple hats. That will just make for a really engaging cohort experience experience if you've got folks that are representing different perspectives. We would ask that you be able to participate in all of the trainings. And if you are able to really commit the time to go through the training experience. We all know what it's like to be wildly busy and pulled in a bunch of different directions, but we want to make sure that we're delivering the very best training experience that you can get. And it's really hard to do that if you're not able to commit to the training. So by that, I mean being like fully present during those training days. So encourage you to block those dates off on your calendar and don't book any competing meetings so that you can be fully present and really benefit from the training. The ability to pay for travel costs is just basically hopefully the transportation, just depending on kind of where you are in the LA region. As I said, we've got the Pasadena City College is one location, the Foothills campus is one location. So just want to acknowledge that we know people are going to get there in different ways. So there's no stipend for travel or anything like that, but there's also no costs associated with this training because of the LARC and California Community Colleges organization. So a huge thanks to them because normally the training would be $2,500 to $3,000 per person. So we're excited to be able to offer this training to you at no cost, thanks to those partners. In terms of the number of participants for this cohort, we're looking for up to 35 folks, so we do have limited space. The LARC team will use a scoring rubric in order to evaluate those applications. But what you'll notice throughout the application questions is what we're really trying to just understand is, how are you going to use this framework? What do you kind of see as your role in implementing the framework, and what is the feasibility that you'll be able to make use of the framework? Because we certainly want this to be more than just a training, but something that hopefully you will be able to make use of. So we do ask for you to commit to the training experiences and to come fully prepared and present, and to sign your name to that component so that we ensure you know what you're signing up for. These are the short answer questions that you'll be able to find on the website. And this is kind of the timeline that's being followed. So as we said, the applications are currently available. They're due February 25th, and we'll be accepting folks on a rolling basis, which is why I suggest that you guys go ahead and try to apply as soon as you can. The link is something that we can pop in the chat. But one thing that I want to emphasize again and again, and if you know anybody who could not attend this session live, and you might send them the recording, but they might not watch the whole thing. So this is a point that we really want to make, is that we encourage you to come prepared with your responses. You may want to consider writing out your responses in a Word document and saving it. Because you can't save the application once you've started it. So if your Wi-Fi goes down or something happens, your responses are gone. So go ahead and I encourage folks to put it into a Word document so that in the case that that happens, that you have it you have it in hand and you don't have to start from scratch. You will receive an email from our team. You can get an email with all of your responses from our team once you have submitted the application. So make sure that you get that confirmation email. If you don't receive the confirmation email, that means that we did not get your application. So make sure that you actually are able to submit successfully. You've got that confirmation email. If you have any issues, then please feel free to reach out to our team. Any more technical issues, you can reach out to our team. If you have more of a question about the Academy experience, why LARC wants to bring the TPM Academy to Los Angeles, then Narone is going to be your best point of contact for those types of questions. These are just a couple of commonly asked questions in terms of when the training sessions are. Again, we had those dates on the TPM Academy of Los Angeles website. We are asking you to reserve the full 2 days for those in-person training sessions. The orientation will be closer to like 2.5 hours at most. But for the in-person, plan on committing a full 2 days, and we'll get you the exact times as we get closer once the applicants have been confirmed. feel free to read through these, and then I would love to, just with our limited time remaining, make sure that any questions that you guys have are fully answered. We covered it all.
You did an awesome job. So
I will take down my screen just so that I can see all of you. Let me know if there is anything. We can close out early if not. All right, to our LARC hosts, anything that you all would like to add?
Yeah, I just want to thank you and Nikki for really the partnership and the support and for launching this today's webinar, and also to our LA19 colleagues and organizations and partners that are on. Thank you so much. We appreciate your time and your support as we work together to really enhance workforce development in our region. We are really encouraging you to share the TPM Academy information, the application link, and the webinar information that we send out with your colleagues, and encourage them to apply as well. And we hope that you can join us as we build a stronger workforce ecosystem together. So thank you so much for spending your Friday afternoon with us. We hope you have a wonderful weekend.